Silke, go ahead and kind of start at the beginning of what happened when you were with Wycliffe Germany, and we can talk a little bit about that scenario and how you guys responded.
Yeah, so May 2015, our colleague was killed. She was shot during the abduction of another colleague that she was sharing a flat with in a guest house. That person was from another mission, and that mission requested that the story will be kept from the public, if at all possible, so that the negotiations with the kidnappers will not be impaired, there will not be any additional risk for the kidnapped lady.
Yeah, tell me first, how did you receive the news? How did everybody find out that it happened?
Yeah, we have an emergency phone, and the call came in an evening, so it was out of office hours, and whoever had the phone at that time got the call and called in everybody else, which was the director, it was the personnel, HR director, who had just started his job and was brand new to the job. So they called in the former one as well, because he had more experience and he knew her well. The new one didn't even know her. I think he never met her in his life. They called me in for communications, and they called the operational manager of Wycliffe Germany, the business manager.
And you said that you did have an existing crisis communications plan, but it wasn't necessarily easy to find.
Yeah, it's not specifically crisis communications. It was more crisis management, which included everything, like even finance and, the setup of the team and the running of the team. And communications was just a small part of it and not super developed, I have to confess. So there were as we found, many traps and blanks that we had to fill in as we went on. And in terms of communications, the first thing was, as I mentioned before, that they said, aren't there ready-made statements? And I said, no, there are no statements. And my supervisor, once we got hold of him, confirmed that there are no statements, and it's impossible to have a statement in your drawer somewhere that would fit any situation.
Right.
So the next thing that I did in terms of communications was to get professional help, and I really recommend that. It was a good idea. In our crisis management handbook, we had the contact data of someone, a Christian. He has experience in crisis communication, especially speaking to the press, and he had managed another crisis for another organization a number of years ago. And he had said, if we need him, we can call him, and he gave us a phone number. A cell phone number. So when I called him, I don't know whether that's a phone number he just keeps for emergencies, because he answered. He was in a meeting and he immediately answered. So he stepped out of the meeting to take the call. And he was always there to help. That was really, really great. So because we could always call and ask, what do you recommend? What would you say from your experience? And he could just help us and give his evaluation of things, or how he would assess a certain risk. And that was just really, really helpful. Even if we had decided maybe to do it differently, at least we would have had somebody's opinion, informed opinion. And that was really good.
What were the things that he was able to help you most with that you weren't sure about?
He really encouraged us to actually cover our our traces, and he really encouraged us to say, don't talk to the press, because they will, even the Christian press, they're not for you. They want a story, and if it hurts you, they don't care. So he wasn't really at all in favor of talking to the press. And so it was just good to get his backing in this, because we sometimes felt really bad, I said, aren't these people our friends? He said, no, they're not your friends, because I've been through this.
Were you getting a lot of contacts from the news media?
Interestingly enough, not, because the news as such It made the news, the killing, even in the prime time news on TV. It was one of the top news. And when it kind of leaked that she was a missionary, or at least a Christian development worker, the press started calling all sorts of agencies that they knew had staff in. They didn't call us.
Did the agencies that the media did contact all kind of respond the same way, or was there any coordinated plan there?
Well, I don't know how coordinated they were. I mean, in Germany, there are not so many Christian media as you would have in the States. So there's not too many that could call you. There's one kind of main player, a main Christian print magazine that holds basically, the market. And then there are some others that are less important. And it's mainly that main print magazine that really called everyone. One magazine actually called us, and when I had them on the phone, I mean, my heart was beating like mad. And then they asked something completely else. So they didn't even think that we could be related to this. They had something else in mind, no relation in the public, in the media. But of course, we had to prepare for the case that we would be, called and asked. So what I did was to brief every single person in the organization, in case you are called or you are being, if a journalist just approaches you on the premises or whatever, this is what you're going to say. And basically what they had to say was, thank you for your request, and we will get back to you. I'm not the person, I don't know anything. I'm not in the know, and we are very happy to give you to get you in touch with somebody who can speak for the organization. And that person to speak for the organization would probably have been the director, or that person, that professional person that we had contacted, because he said he would be, if it really was necessary, if we were in bad trouble, he could speak for us.
Right. Seems like that's a pretty important component of the plan, is to kind of centralize or minimize the number of people who do speak for the organization, because everybody Absolutely. Wants to, right? And everybody wants to be nice on the phone and answer questions, but there's some care that has to go into that.
Yeah, you still want to be nice on the phone, but it doesn't mean that you answer questions. Yeah. And I mean, still to sound competent and caring and say, yes, we really appreciate your request and we would like to help. But I'm not, the person you need to talk to, and we will call you back. And that would give us some time to find out who the caller was, For example, if it's a certain journalist, we could quickly Google him and see, how he thinks. Is he, does he like us? Does he hate us? I mean, is he left wing? Is he right wing? I mean, that really would kind of make a difference in how you respond. And then you can go back to that person. And what our strategy would have been to not say anything apart from what's already out in the media, for example, to confirm, yes, that person got killed, and yes, there was another person abducted, and that's the reason why we cannot share any further information. And also our policy at that point was to say that we would not, without need, acknowledge that she was with Wycliffe. If this abduction case had not happened, we probably would have acknowledged that and said, yes, she was our staff. But because we had requested to not leak anything to the press that wasn't already known, we didn't.
Yeah, still an active situation, so.
I mean, that abduction made it extra difficult. If it had, in inverted commas, just been the killing, I mean, then the person's already dead. You can't harm her anymore. So you can only harm the organization, or you can harm the co-workers. And if we had said that she was working with us, I don't think it would have done a lot of harm. Because if you Google, you would find that has worked with, because there are academic papers bearing her name, and the people group she worked with, linguistic papers.
I wanted to ask too about, when you're in the middle of something like this, and I've experienced something like this with a campus shooting here in the US that I was there for, and you get so busy with responding that you kind of forget that this is a tragedy that affected all of you, and you've lost a friend, and those kinds of things. So how did you kind of find a balance in those things, and how did you care for your own staff?
I don't think we didn't. Didn't find a balance. And we really felt that some people really got hurt in the process. And what I found most difficult was communicating with his family. Because I would have wished for them, to be able to speak openly, because they got pestered by the press. Of course, press found out who the killed person was and who her family was, so they showed up at their door, and they got instructed by us not to say that they had been working with us. And that was really hard on them. I mean, they cooperated beautifully, and they did everything in their power. It was really important to them. It wasn't that they just did it because they felt pressurized by us. They did it out of their own free will. But still, it was hard on them. And I mean, my heart was really bleeding when I had to talk to them on the phone again and brief them and say, I'm sorry, but that's what you have to do, and that's what you can say and what you can't say. And the pastor of this church, he was very unhappy about this, and he said, this is just, you're too afraid. You should be courageous and speak up. That's your mandate as a Christian organization. You should, own up to what you're doing. And so that was not nice. And also some of our own staff felt, that it was really hard not to share openly. One of best friends, another lady, she really struggled with this. I mean, we offered, support. We offered counseling for anybody who wanted it. Our counseling team was always standing by. But I don't think they didn't want counseling. They wanted to speak their mind. They wanted to share and cry with somebody. And we said, yes, if you have one trusted friend, go ahead and share, but we just have to be very, very careful, not to make sure to not, talk to everyone or put it in your newsletter or whatever. And it was quite hard on some. Something maybe for the future, if that ever happens again, probably one person just has to deal with internal communications apart from the actual crisis communication, what you say to the public, but how to deal with all the hurts and disappointments and the grief that's within the organization and within the family and the friends. Yeah.
It's hard, isn't it? Because you feel like you're being kind of cold, in a situation like that, when you're doing what's best for the organization, but it doesn't necessarily feel good when you're doing it.
Doesn't feel good at all, no. And you feel whatever you do, you're going to hurt someone.
Yeah.
You either hurt the organization or you hurt a person. So, I mean, it was good that I could later meet his family in person, and they were just the loveliest and kindest people you could think of, and it was really a good meeting.
So as you look back on that whole tragic situation, what are some parts of a crisis communications plan? We'll stick especially with communications, but it'll just be a crisis plan in general too. But what are the really important parts that you'd say an organization needs to have in place prior to anything like this happening?
Is to know who the stakeholders are. So it took us a lot of time, precious time that we lost, because we had to find out who has to know what about this situation. And there is another organization, kind of a secular development type organization, And then there are also different organizations under which the staff works. So, and just to find out whom we need to talk to. And I think it took us 3 days to get a meeting together. And then we found that we were kind of worlds apart in our way we thought about things. And I said, why on earth are you doing this? And we said to ourselves, why on earth are you doing this? And we kept, it was really difficult. And Wycliffe really need to communicate from the start, because a person will normally always be a member of both organizations, and both organizations will have to cooperate and to coordinate their strategies and their plans. At some point said things publicly where we felt that we hadn't yet revealed that or released that, to our own staff, and was going ahead and publishing this, in mailings to everybody within the organization. And also felt that we were going ahead with stuff that we hadn't talked to them about. So after it was over, we had to sit down and have some serious talk.
Yeah, I know, there's just a huge desire for information on the staff when something happens. And I've always said, in the absence of information, people create their own. And so sometimes that'll happen too, is you'll just get all these rumors and things. So, controlling that early on, just being as open as you possibly can, or if you can't be open, explain why you can't be.
Of course, we told our staff what had happened. We said who was killed and where and when and how. And we said she was shot, I think. But I mean, even we didn't know much of the details until basically after it was all over. Then we had a briefing with some staff coming over, and they gave us more detail than I ever cared about, frankly. So, but most people never heard those details, and I mean, shouldn't, because I mean, why? That's nobody's business,
Right. How did things resolve with the other person who was kidnapped?
She was released after a reasonable time. I mean, not too long. And she was okay. But I think it sort of ended well. I mean, for a kidnapping, it always leaves scars.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Last question, I guess, would be, what would you say to an organization that really doesn't have a plan in place and says, oh, we're so small, it's, we don't have time, we're not going to be dealing with things like this, but you've obviously learned different.
I think if you're small, it's even more important to have a plan, because you have less manpower to, share responsibility with, and it will all fall on 1, 2, 3 people who have to do it all. And at least they should get professional help or contact data of someone to contact before the crisis hits. So that's the least they could do. If they say, we are too small anyway to manage a crisis, then they should have an exit strategy, out of the crisis. Who else will take care of this if I can't? Will it fall on the alliance? Will it fall to, for example, SL Eurasia area, if it's happening there? Or, are we getting professional help from within the country, or help from everybody, depending on what it is? I mean, for example, let's say Wycliffe, Czech Republic. Something is happening to their staff. Wycliffe in Czech Republic is probably too small to do it all. But for example, to monitor the press in Czechia, neither the Global Alliance nor SL Eurasia has no place to do that, because nobody speaks Czech, so we would need somebody within the Czech Republic to monitor the press and put everyone on alert if he sees something, is in the making here and there's stuff being reported that we need to be aware of. So they should think ahead, is there someone in our country that we could ask, maybe from another mission, maybe just somebody who is, a friend and would know how to do this, who is in journalism or whatever, and put him on the list, to be called, and otherwise, cooperate with the alliance. and
Yeah, I was
ask
going
them.
to say it's probably a good place for me to mention that the Alliance communications team can help you find expert help. We won't be the expert help. We aren't equipped to do that. And like you said, it needs to be someone more local. But if there's a situation where there's, a tragedy or something like this happening, certainly we can offer some counsel and, a little bit of help at the outset. So that's one
Absolutely.
of the advantages of having the Alliance, I guess, is that we can help each other with these kinds of things as far as we're able.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very good. I mean, for example, what we are planning to do is to train staff on all levels in basic communications skills. So, for example, if we need to have someone on the ground to monitor the media, then we would know whom to ask, So you don't have to call on any odd person who has no idea what she's supposed to look for, But if somebody has had rudimentary training, not to manage the crisis, not to talk to the press, but just to monitor, and read and watch TV and so on, and then know when it's time to alert the leadership or the communications team or whoever to say, something's happening here, this is turning nasty, be aware so it doesn't hit you unaware. And so, for example, even if smaller Wycliffe organizations would have some very, very rudimentary training, that probably would help them to at least to know what to look out for and what kind of help to call in.
Well, thanks so much. This has been really informative. So I appreciate, Silke, your candor on this and just the information. This will be very helpful to people. So appreciate that.